Welcome to the weekend preview. Friday mornings, we have a bit of a chat about what's coming for the weekend. But Ari, this time we're also going to be looking back a little bit because since you and I spoke last on Monday, Rassie announced his 43-man squad for the Argentina match. I'm just saying that because apparently that's not the final squad for the All Blacks, and we'll talk about that just now. And I was wondering, what's your thoughts on this? Quite a few surprising things there. A couple of players sent home that I wouldn't have expected to. Tell me what you thought.
Yeah, I think it's tough to try and get the players to not be in the squad. It's almost like if you turn it around. So 43, it's an exciting squad. The big news, of course, was the 10 injured players that's coming back. So it was interesting to see all the comments from overseas. I think it's often good to just see what the reaction is from New Zealand, etc., etc. So they're trying to make something out of that. There's too many players that haven't played enough and too much. They also have Fabian Holland that's coming back, that's had a shoulder injury for 5 months or something. So they're in the same boat as well, ironically also at lock. So I think our biggest concern, Mbia, is we spoke about that, was all those locks that need to urgently play rugby. So I hope they can urgently play against Argentina and do well and come through that. What's concerning is about Eben Etzebeth's concussion concerns. So there's been quite a few of that now. Loer de Jager seems to be a little bit injury prone, but hopefully he's through that, and then Mostert is key as well. But those two that I just mentioned, Mostert or Eben Etzebeth and Loer is important. So good to see them in the 10 players coming back. So some of the players we expected, like Sasha and Van der Berg, and those players, shorter term injuries like Hooker and Kanan Moody, and those we knew would be back. But Sia and then the locks, they're important to play against Argentina. So that's maybe the takeaway for me as well. Good to hear that it's not the set one for the All Blacks. You would think that there's going to be lots of rugby in between as well. Argentina will show us many things. And then obviously they're going to probably have one eye on what's happening against the franchises or with the franchises as well. But then again, not too many of the players will be involved in that, seems like, for the Stormers and the Bulls and the Sharks before the first test. So, it's good to see. What I do want to talk about a little bit is just the options for Rassie, maybe. That's something that I had a discussion with a person or two that's quite close to their process as well, and it was clear he's building layers, and we've been used to him building layers, depth, and with teams and players, at least 1, 2, 3, 4 players in certain positions. But it feels like, for me, like almost like if you talk about layers, we think about the onion. It's almost like a green onion for me, if I can put the green for the Springboks. So where I see the layers, it's layers related to options and these plans and these adjustments. Why I say that is, if you want to win 4 tests, we saw it in playing against the British and Irish Lions. If you want to win 3 or 4 tests, there's going to be adjustments the whole time. It's your ability, how you adjust. What happened in the previous test, injuries, game plan, all those components that come into play. But I will say that we can talk about that. It's these options and these plans and these adjustments. What is building depth in that, and just briefly in adjustments, maybe. I mean, we're the only team, as an example, that can say you've got a Jan Hendrik Wessels that can play comfortably at international level, Hooker and Lucet. There's no other international Lucet that we know of for New Zealand or for France or anybody that can play comfortably on both of them. I don't know of any other Andre Esterhuizen that can comfortably now play in the loose forwards as well and play centre. We even have Grant Williams that can play wing. That 43-10 win against New Zealand in Wellington, Williams was on the wing taking the last passing to Esterhuizen. That's on adjustments. We know that he's been thinking out of the box there. So that's part of the layers that I'm talking about.
When you talk about onions, the thing that comes to mind to me is tears. Hopefully there's not going to be any tears when those layers start being peeled away, and it's not going to catch up that we're trying to be too clever kind of a thing. Now, I understand what you're saying. Depth is quite important, and I think that's probably one of the All Blacks' biggest concerns is their depth. Now, we talked to Martin Devlin the other day, and quite a few of you watched that video. Thank you very much. And he, like you said, he was fishing around a little bit. What are we expecting? Who's going to play for the franchises? Interesting enough, it seems like the All Blacks are taking this one very seriously. It might even be to the degree that they think it's more important than a World Cup. Are those rumors true? Can it be? Can this tour be more important than the World Cup in any way?
Yes, I actually heard him say that on one of his podcasts. So Devlin and one of his guests, they said, no, it's more important than the World Cup, and they agreed. So maybe it's just in the moment. Sometimes you're in this moment. It's 2026. It's about to happen, and then you get more motivated by that. Maybe it's also got to do that they haven't won the World Cup in a while. So say, let's just focus on something else we can win now. So that's also maybe a factor.
Shots
But
fired.
yeah. So if I can get that one in, just on sort of stats, I read the other day. It's interesting. They won that first World Cup in 1987. Remember, when we like to remind them that South Africa didn't play in that tournament and had a team that beat them the previous year in South Africa. But that we will park that one. But it took them 24 years to win the next one in 2011. So it's not as if they kind of dominated that World Cup scene as well. They won it again in 2015. And then from then it's a frustration. So World Cup is not the be all and end all. I looked at the stats, their team between 2010 and 2020, and just before that as well. That team that really won the World Cups, how successful they were. They had an 87% success rate, a winning margin. Since then, from 2020 to 2027, the All Blacks win rate is 72%. So they dropped considerably. So that's why there's frustration in New Zealand, and that's why they're not kind of used to taking all these losses. And so they're quite excited about Dave Rennie. I think he's doing good things and playing to their strengths. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the tour. But it's interesting. They maybe should have added the fifth test just to make it an uneven number.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
we don't want the risk for ending 2-2, but it's a 3 home test. So that South Africa need to try and win all 3, and then anything can happen at the neutral field in Baltimore.
Yeah, we've sort of unofficially decided that the 3 tests in South Africa are the only ones that really matter. We're going to count them. Except if we lose them, then the last one in America is obviously going to count. So, you know what? We'll adjust our sails to the wind. Let's call it that. We know what we like. No, I'm just kidding. But I think those 3 tests in South Africa, you have home ground advantage. You've got the crowd going bananas around you. Altitude for 2 of the 3 games. It's important. For me, that's what it is about. I think the last one is basically just a money spinner. Get a lot of South African fans over in America. From what I gather, there's lots of excitement building for that. I can see the benefit of but I also think back to that game against the Ireland versus the All Blacks in America. It was a bit of a damp squib. There was no anthems, and the cameras weren't rigged for it, and the sound just didn't feel right, I suppose. Now, I hope they've learned their lessons, and we'll see how that goes. So, I want to get back to your layers analogy quickly, your onion analogy. So what's the plan? I mean, if you go, in an onion, you go down, the deeper you go, the smaller it gets. So what is the actual plan? Where do you feel that we still have a bit of a problem with depth for the Springboks? I mean, lock's obviously an issue, like you said. Eben's coming back, but there's a question mark around him. Lewitt's coming back, but there's a question mark around him. Ruben van Heerden is not in the 43 because he has to go to Montpellier, but he's on standby, and I've got a feeling about him. I think he's one to watch for the future. Where do you see the actual layers not deep enough, for example, in this group?
I think he built good layers all over. Like I said, it's options and plans and adjustments. But I would say there's 2 components. It's when you can adjust on adjustment. There's 2 options that layers will help you. That's in the tactically and also mentally. So tactically, it's as it happens before you play the test on the 22nd of August. How you're going to play, who's going to play, etc. So that's obvious. That's going to play out on the 22nd of August as well. But to win 4 tests, it's going to be how you tactically then move on from there. Continuously who's playing. So that is where there's layers. So if he needs different players in different roles, maybe somebody's not playing good enough, maybe there's an injury, he's got that layer. So that's where the layers come in tactically, who to play and how to play as well. So how to play, they've got a strong team, they will know how to play. And apparently they've got this book that's 85 pages or something that they have their home game plan and all these things that they're doing. So it's I think they know how to play. They know the opponents. We'll see who the referees. All those things come into play, but also mentally. And the layers have been built mentally, and people underestimate that. MV, I think it's alignment camps. So we've seen many alignment camps. On alignment camps they do a little bit of gym and maybe here and there 1 or 2 things. But it's alignment camps is mental. It's about aligning. It's everyone. It's about relationships, understanding the players, getting to know the coaches, understanding the whole the English talk about a vibe, or what the Springboks want to do, how they want to play. So that mental approach, that is important. And then the big thing is attention to detail. So attention to detail also comes into layers. So individually, everybody needs to know what they need to do, how they need to do it, where they fit in, stay within the system, but also probably have the freedom if they see something, players like Sasha, if they see something, play it. If Grant Esterhuizen sees something, play it. So that, and Damian Willemse as well. So you've got players that can play. That's what the All Blacks do a little bit more maybe. But back to the green onion, I think. So I think there's layers in tactical options in terms of how to play and who to play, and then you've got layers in terms of the mental approach. That's continuous. So once you're in that environment for those 4 tests, it's going to be lots of pressure, lots of information, and they need to make decisions. But when they make that decision, somebody needs to be able to step up, and that's where they built the layers through alignment camps, through giving players exposure. And the mental side comes in feeling comfortable in the system as well. So you can see some of these new players coming in. They just slot in, and they haven't been there like the 4 players that played the last test. So against Wales, so you could see that they stepped in seamlessly almost. So, but that's where he's building layers. So I think he's got enough players. We're going to miss RG Snyman, we're going to miss Kwagga Smith, so that we know. There's like 5 positions that player wise would be great if Marx can play all 4 tests. That would be amazing. If Pieter-Steph can play all 4 tests. If Kriel can play all 4 tests, and Damian Willemse can play all 4. The other positions you feel that they can be replaced. It's not perfect, but maybe Jasper Wiese as well needs to be fit as well, those 5. But the rest you can feel that you can maybe pick a few different locks and props and flanks and fly-offs. There's a few options, and even scrum half centers you can play around a little bit at 12. Andre Esterhuizen will be a good backup for Adel Lendy. Wings we can play around, but you get the feeling that Willems is a lot better than Fassi, for instance, if you look at it like that, or Koen Horn, that's not played enough. So that's my example. So those five players need to stay fit, but if they don't, he's got layers to fit in. And if you look at the All Blacks, if they lose a few key players as well, if they lose Roygaard, for instance, they're thin on 9. So that's every team's got that. But the stats tell us in line series, in those series, when you play 4 tests like that, there's going to be injuries, there's going to be problems. So you will need to adjust. So you're not going to have the same 23 for 4 tests. So there's probably going to be 1 or 2 injuries a game. Maybe you have a game, there's no injuries, a game with 3 injuries, you never know. But throughout the 4 tests, there's probably going to be a few changes. So I think that's where he's building that green onion that hopefully will work.
Right. On that subject, talking about the franchises, we've got 2 tickets to give away for the Bulls versus the All Blacks, and 2 tickets to give away for the Sharks versus the All Blacks. We'll give you some details during the course of next week, so keep listening out for that. I want to tell you a little story. Our friend Paul Avenant is on holiday in South Africa after attending the matches. He's going back home, and then he's coming back for the All Blacks. And he's at a game reserve, and they went on a game drive, and they bumped into Rassie Erasmus on a game drive. Can you believe it? What a sighting to see the biggest Springbok of them all, I suppose. And Paul said he was so starstruck, he didn't know what to say. So talking of Paul, on Sunday we're publishing an episode of The Long Way Home. We go into a bit of depth with a new addition to the Megaphone roster, Gronje Shogi. She's now agreed to join Megaphone. So you'll see more of her. She'll have her own show. We talk about that, talk about the details. Someone with 30 years of experience in Irish broadcasting, was on Sky News and everything. I mean, it's a bit of a coup for us to have her here on Megaphone, so we're looking forward to that. Ari, I just wanted to ask you something else. I've been accused this week of laying into you and, getting some pleasure out of asking you about the Storm versus penalties and the likes. Just please explain to people that we are friends, and I don't intend to make you look bad or anything like that. I'm so tired of that. Same guy accusing me of the same thing every single week. Get over yourself. Tell people we're friends, man.
For sure, we're friends. There's good respect, and I can just put it in context. I grew up in the northern Verre Noord, in the far northern Transvaal. I was there. My parents got transferred. I was born in Cape Town, and then Ben Foster Hoërskool in Sanin. That's where I went to school. So I've got most of my friends, mostly all of my friends are Blaubulle. So I'm used to that. I was one of the only VP supporters in Ben Vorster Hoërskool. I think the headmaster was also Basie Jansen, was also a VP ondersteuner. He went to Potchefstroom later, but yep. Yeah, there's good banter. But I will try to stand up a little bit better. Maybe his concern is that I must kind of fight back a little bit more, Envia. But it's good banter. So sometimes
I'm just saying,
take it, but sometimes you give it.
Last week, remember you asked me, we must talk about those 13 penalties that Stormers conceded in the first half, remember? And we discussed it beforehand, so I just brought it up. But now apparently I make the Bulls look bad if I do that.
There will always be banter.
That's what it is.
There's respect. Yeah. There's good respect. So that's the important one, as long as there's respect.
Right. Now, I can't wait for this. We've got so many plans for this greatest rivalry. Martin Devlin has agreed to be with us every single week, once a week on Lekker Rugby Pod, because you love hearing from him. And of course, Martin is a little bit different when he's on Lekker Rugby Pod than when he is on his own show, because it's different. It's banter, like you just said, when we talk to him. And we've got a couple of other ones lined up as well. You've got a couple of guests lined up for us as well. So people will be keeping you busy. You will have to go nowhere else, so no other place than Megaphone Rugby. We've got it covered. Don't you worry. So anyway, let's get back to the Springboks quickly. I think the biggest surprise for me of that squad that was announced was the players that didn't make it, players that were sent back. And, Andre Iguvente is sort of there or thereabouts. Mchunu got a chance, but it's still early days for him. And, the biggest surprise for me was Evan Roos and Embrose Papier being sent back. I mean, I said yesterday, spoke to my friend Angus Opperman of Rugby 365. It feels like these two players are not getting a proper chance. And I'm using both of them, the Stormers guy and the Bulls guy. Like they're in and out. Embrose last played in 2018, got one game, scored a try, did very well, and now he's being sent back. And a guy like Morley van der Berg just comes right back in. And Herschel Jantjies, who was out of it. It doesn't make sense to me. Evan Roos, the same thing. Yes, I know people say he doesn't have good handling, or he doesn't have the right temperament, whatever. But I mentioned the example of Ruben Love yesterday for the All Blacks. He got a chance in all three tests to prove himself. Not one game, but all three of them. So he can get used to the pressure, start settling in. I mean, if you look at physicality, Evan Roos is probably the closest to Jasper Wiese as an eighth man, as a backup kind of thing. Cameron Hanekom is a different type of eight. Elrich Louw will be a different type of eight. Even if Marco goes plays eight or Sia plays eight, they're different eights. It doesn't make sense to me. Talk to me about those players that didn't make it, who were being sent back.
Yes, I think it is a challenge for Rassie to try and pick them, and I think the challenge that he's got at the moment is that those two players, Roos and Papier, played well in the URC. So Papier had a great season; he got accolades in the season. So he's proven week on week out that he plays well. Roos as well. Maybe one thing that may be a bit of a factor is that. There were perceptions on both of them on certain areas that they had to address. So in Papier's case, it was maybe more defence and maybe kicking, etc. We also always knew his strength in attack and he's fast. So he worked at that. I think he's a lot better. Roos, again, there was also perceptions that it was easy to kind of get under his skin and maybe get him to react out of frustration, etc., etc. He worked on that, so he's a lot better. I think you're right. He's close to Wiese. So you would think that if you look at who would be the backup eight if that happens, I'm still wondering if he's not thinking about Sia Kolisi as well as another eight, because he played some of that rugby at the Sharks for eight. So maybe he's kind of in their discussions, maybe somewhere in the reckoning for eight. Otherwise, it should be Hanekom. Elrich Louw might be as well, but I think it would be Hanekom. He's the only other one that really in that squad that's also played eight. I don't think I'm missing anybody. At one stage, you had Cobus Wiese at eight. Remember that one test? He played him there. So maybe he can consider him as well, but that's playing out of position, especially in a big test like New Zealand. So yes, I was also surprised with Roos. Maybe could have sneaked the 43 to 44 or something, but he's got his 43, so he needs to make that decision somewhere. I've got a suspicion that those players will come into the mix as August come closer and September, also I hope that the Stormers allow and Rassie allow those players from the Stormers that went back to play against the All Blacks. It's early enough in their tour So they're lucky in the sense that they play them on the 7th of August. So it's quite a few weeks still before the 22nd. It's different maybe for the Bulls players on the 15th compared to the 22nd. But Roos and Nchunu and also Hugo Venter can, with good performances against the All Blacks on the 7th of August, just stake their claim again. So I think that will happen. Hopefully if they kind of 50-50 in the mind of Rassie, especially Roos, that will be a perfect game for Roos to say, well, this is who I am. This is what I can do against the All Blacks. So I think he hopefully will be included in the Stormers team. That would be good for the 7th of August, and that will probably address that. But I feel sorry for Papito as well. Like you say, you've got Yankees that they're in the same conversation, so very similar players. But Yankees just got the nod. But there's a good chance there might be some injuries in that area as well throughout the series. So I think they might be back in the reckoning again.
I think it's going to be all of them are going to play against the All Blacks. I mean, Ruben van Heerden's going to Montpellier, so he's not in the running. That's why he's also on standby. Because I know it's a bit of a challenge for the franchises. They're running low on players. I mean, the Bulls and the Stormers have so many Springboks, in the Sharks to a degree as well, that they can't pick. And they've got injuries. They've got the Currie Cup to contend with. They've got the Currie Cup has to have a certain number of 23s and under 23s in it. It's a challenge. Getting a player like Emrose Papier back maybe for that specific game is going to make a big difference, I suppose. I wonder if Curwin Bosch is going to make his debut, interestingly enough. That's going to be an interesting one. Or maybe it's too early. Maybe it's going to be Kikin Johannes. Yeah, I think it's probably going to send him back, give him a chance, and then, when they announce the squad again, some of them might be pulled back in. There's 4 games, 4 tests. It's going to be tough. It's going to be physical. So I assume there's going to be a lot of players getting injured and falling by the wayside. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that is the case, and I would like to see the URC teams putting lots of pressure on the All Blacks. So I know that Devlin, when he spoke about the New Zealand, what we remember from those tours as well is, but like the test teams playing against Auckland and Wellington, etc., we were there, and the same happened this side. But it's just not possible. He was asking who would play against the All Blacks from the URC teams, but the reality is, if this was in New Zealand, and the first test was the 22nd of August in Auckland, and they played the Wellington Hurricanes on the 15th. They're not going to play Roygaard and Ruben Love for other Hurricanes against the Springboks a week before the test. So that's unfair part, specifically where the Bulls game fit into this. The 15th compared to the 22nd, the next Saturday is the test. So the 7th for the Stormers, you can still maybe get away with it. You can still have some players that's in that one and maybe play and then get into contention. But the 15th is too close to the 22nd. By then, Rassie will have his team already confirmed, and he will maybe have a look at that first Stormers game, and then he'll get a feel. And then that Tuesday coming, it's just they're going to follow quickly. The 7th and then the 11th, they play the Sharks. So it's quick turnarounds, and then the 15th. So that first 3 games is in a space of 7 days. So that's going to happen all very quickly. So when we kind of blink, it's all done, and then they play the first test on the 22nd of August. So there's not much time for Rassie to he can only kind of really gauge what's happening on the 7th of August, maybe, with those players that we mentioned.
All right, let's just move on to Currie Cup a little bit. Last weekend, a couple of surprises. The Bulls losing to the Boland, Stormers eking out a victory against the defending champions, the Griquas. Pumas giving the Sharks a bit of a go, losing by 2 points though. And the Cheetahs, the old men of the Cheetahs, scraping by against the young guns of the Lions. So what are we looking forward for this weekend? And I saw the Cheetahs versus the Sharks first up tonight, Friday night, 5 o'clock. Well, this afternoon, I suppose. That's going to be an interesting one. What are you expecting from that match? We don't know where the teams are. I mean, the Cheetahs are there. I've seen the Cheetahs team sheet, but I don't know much of the players anyway. But it's still other teams we don't know. What are you expecting?
Yeah, it's interesting in week 2, you have these combinations of teams playing each other that's won the first week and teams that lost the first week. So that's interesting combinations because that's happening in the first game. The 2 winners kind of from the first games is the Cheetahs and the Sharks. So they play the first game, and then the other 2 that won will play on Sunday. That's the Stormers and the Boland. So sometimes often that's got a role to play there. I think it's got a big role to play in Kimberley if I can go to that first, maybe. The Cheetahs, well, the Griquas being the defending champion, lost in the last minutes. It was frustrating last minutes. They were actually winning that game as we spoke. Card in the end there, right on the goal line of the Stormers, that overturned the try. And we know what happened there in the end. But so that's frustrating. So to go to Kimberley now for the Bulls is a tough ask because Griquas will be really up for it to win again in Kimberley. But the same is in Johannesburg, and the same for the Katgeveg, the Lions against the Pumas.
Yeah.
The cat fight. So that's both of them need to get back on the horse again. So I think the Pumas were surprised by the Sharks maybe in that first game. Maybe the Pumas expected that one to win. And then a tough one for the Lions also in Bloemfontein. So it's tough to win in Bloemfontein now. They've got a good team. So it's interesting game. So just take it one by one. I think the Cheetahs at home will be tough to beat. If you go to Ellis Park as well, so it will be tough for the Pumas. They're under pressure now, and the Lions will be desperate as well. I think the game for me of the weekend probably is going to be that Griquas Bulls one. I think that 5x5 on Saturday. But again, it's tough to play in Kimberley, and they're a settled side, more experienced players, well coached. You've got George Whitehead there. You've got Alexander playing his 50th game. Leon Lyons on the prop that's experienced, that played for the Stormers as well. Dylan Mart on the wing that's going to the Bulls. So they've got experienced players. So the Bulls also not bad. I mean, they've definitely not bad. Dylan Smith on the prop, Nicolas Jansen van Rensburg, experienced, Namas Gaba, Keegan Johannes, Devin Williams. So there's enough players in between there that will make that a big game. And then obviously Sunday, a big one. I'm going to that one as well in Wellington. So that will be a big local derby. Seems like they expect a full house there. So Boland hosting the Stormers 23. So that's going to be a big one in Cape Town. And both of them won the first round. But Boland being well coached by Javi Sfuri. I like what he's doing there. He's got experience in Streda at 9. He's got Williams at lock. There's Thermal Marsh, that's a great inspirational captain, and Dane van der Westhuizen is an experienced players. There's quite a few that you can mention in the team. But Avis Fourie doing great things. He's settled now. He's been there for a few years now, and he's a well-coached team. And that comes from coaches. And that I spoke to Tom Dawson-Squip, the new coach of the Stormers 23, and they lost a friendly game against. The Stormers lost a friendly game just a week or two ago against Boland by 56-26 or something. So he said that he was impressed by Javis, how well coached he was, etc. And he, tongue in the cheek, said that last year in one game he actually texted Javis Fourie and he said, "Well, I just want to say I'm so impressed by how you play and how you've played now." And so he said, "But he needs to delete that message now because opposing coaches now." But he's got lots of respect, so good things happening there. So I'm looking forward to this Currie Cup. It's a good appetizer, so leading into big test match rugby again.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. The big thing for me is I saw someone that I know is quite close to the Bulls, for example, who said this weekend in one of our comments that it's clear that the bigger unions are not taking the Currie Cup seriously anymore. Is that a true statement to make?
Let's look at this clip maybe of Jean-Luc du Plessis. This was after the Stormers played the Griquas, and just what it means to them and why they play the Currie Cup.
Ek het vir die ouens nou in die topkamer gesê baie dankie. Ek waardeer dit. Die wen beteken vir my baie. Elke keer as jy die trui aantrek, val in hierdie kompetisie, die Currie beker, toe ek nog groot geraak het, dit was die kompetisie. So ek het vir ons baie dankie gesê, is hulle het onmenslike baie hard gewys en determinasie. Dit was regtig fantasties om te kyk. En ja, ek dink ons moes nou geweet dat die Griquas, hulle het nou laas jaar gewen en hulle kom hier na toe en hulle voel goed oor self en hulle moet, maar vir ons om die toernooi so te begin, beteken baie. Ons weet daar is nog baie wedstryde wat kom en is nog 'n lang toernooi wat voor lê. Maar ja, dit maak 'n groot verskil as jy eerste een verloor of eerste een by die huis wen. En om so te wen, die laaste minuut 3, ek meen, ja, mens voel lekker, en mens voel goed, en dit is lekker man in die res van die kompetisie so eindig.
He's one of the older players that grew up with the Currie Cup, and his dad played Currie Cup and won the Currie Cup, etc. But they're quite serious. I could see the different approach of the Stormers 23 as well, and they want to win this. They want to be competitive. They've got stronger teams as well, and all of a sudden, if you look at that Stormers team as well, you've got also youngsters, but you've got Ungara at 9 that's going to be captain, but you've got some experience in there as well. Ollie Kebble playing, Gary Porter that played for Zimbabwe. You've got Gerbrand Grobler that was signed now with the Stormers again, playing at Lokskara, and Tubeni is in that group. So you've got some experience, and then you've got the younger players coming through. So they're taking it very serious, and they're getting more competitive as well. And I think they've had enough of taking losses against the Pumas and the Griquas and the Boland in Currie Cups. I think all of the franchises, not only the Stormers, the Bulls and the Sharks as well. So I think we're going to see a lot more competitive. I think they're taking it serious. So it's good to see.
I'm interested to see these new names of the coaches. Sharks coach Mike Vowles. I have no idea who that is. Tom Dawes-Scoop, we know who he is. He's now the Stormers coach, but he was Ike's coach, very successful. I mentioned earlier this week that he was actually the psychologist or even the motivator for the Proteas in the 2023 Cricket World Cup. He knows his stuff. Young, dynamic coach there, Pio Nomlomu at the Bulls. Frans Steyn, of course, at the Cheetahs, doing well. Peter Berg has proven himself more and more over and over. He's now won, the Currie Cup, came close the year before. This is Jimmy Stonehouse. What can we say about Jimmy Stonehouse? The point is some new names and some old names, but some exciting new names. I like this new environment almost, of this new generation of coaches coming through.
Yes, and it took a while for us to embrace the Currie Cup again in the new format. And it was the older generation maybe that was kind of frowning upon it and remembering the good old days. And it's not like that anymore. And we know the reasons for that. But I think the coaches and the players make a difference. And that was what Peter Berg, I think also in the media after the Stormers game, said that we talked about the standard of rugby and the quality of players, etc., etc. So his theory was that because the standard is rising and it's more professional, all the franchises doing well. Remember, SVD and all those franchises also did a lot better all of a sudden. And they've got strong coaching teams in there as well. And he said there's more and more players coming back. They want to play there. There's a bit more money as well. And they see this happening, and there's more opportunities, more competitive, and there's a way to get into higher rugby. So this is a stepping stone for many of the players to get into the URC. And that's where you want to play. So you already see Dylan Mart that was with the Stormers, and the Stormers wanted to keep him, and he went to the Bulls, etc. So it's players that's in demand, that's playing Currie Cup, that's going to play URC next year. So and there's quite a few of these Currie Cup players that's young and exciting. Remember, we must still see all the influx of the SA Under-20 team that won that World Cup to come into this Currie Cup as well. So that's going to happen soon. And so there's going to be some of the players that's going to get chances, maybe a Marcus Miller. There's quite a few that you can mention. Definitely Khilumi and those players will come into it. Jooste will definitely come into it. So there's lots to mention, and that will lift the standard of the Currie Cup even more.
I see the Lions have included 2 junior Springboks, Male Sitole and Tandu Biela. They already included, so that's going to be an interesting one. Just by the way, we mustn't forget Friday night, the final of the first division, Currie Cup first division, SWD Eagles under Heineke Meyer taking on the Valke. And what a difference Heineke Meyer has made in his first season back in rugby. Huh? I mean, you can't keep a good man down.
No, for sure, and he's a brilliant coach. He's you could just see the difference even in just a short amount of time. But he loves that area. He knows George and that area very well. I remember going for one specific game when Western Province played against SVD. That was extremely competitive in the Currie Cup, strongest Western Province team that they could pick. I'm talking about the early 2000s now, and you just had it was just so difficult to win there. I remember Barney Foster and those guys on the wing. I don't know if you remember them, and Mani. There's Mani de Tooy at fullback and those players. So it was, but it was I think Leonard was also playing then for them. But so it's a great tradition that they have there. It's always been good players, good talent coming from those schools as well. And many of those talents from Oakdale and those schools have been scooped up, unfortunately, by many of the other big franchises. I mean, the De Villiers brothers, Paul De Villiers, and all of them come from that area, and they were in school there, and his brother is also going to the Stormers now, so that it happens. But maybe more players staying there, but they're doing a great job in the coaching.
Okay, Ari, I think we have to wrap this up. You can only talk about the Currie Cup so much. It's only the second round. We still have to see how it goes. Like you said, we might get a bit more excited, but I mean, it's such overlapping of the greatest rivalry tour. I suppose it's fighting a losing battle, yeah, but still, it's gonna be interesting. At least we've got some nice rugby to look forward to. Otherwise, it would have been a dead rugby. No rugby this weekend whatsoever. We talk about komkommertyd, you know, that famous saying where there's nothing to report about.
Yeah, we went from komkommer to green onions. So we tried our best to keep it topical.
This is a French salad, but a Greek salad. Yeah, the Greek salad.
The Greek salad. Yeah, but exciting times. Currie Cup is still great to see, and looking forward to the All Blacks as well.
But guys, remember, like I said, we have so much planned for this greatest rivalry, and also today, look out for the video I posted earlier today on the lunch break. I'm talking about the Megaphone Clubhouse that we've launched, which is an exclusive new Megaphone community. We're looking for volunteers to help us test it before the greatest rivalry rolls around. I'm going to put the link up here. Go watch it. See what it's about. I'm very excited about that, and lots to talk about. Ari, thank you very much. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the rugby, the little bit that there is, and best of luck to your Stormers, I suppose. And let's help for my Bulls. And once again, I'm not laying into you. I'm just having a nice little rugby chat. So have a good one. See you Monday.
See you Monday. Bye-bye.